Welcome everyone to the Lake Lewis Show. As you can tell, I'm in Indianapolis, Indiana for the NFL Combine, something I've been doing for the last 15 plus years and have a great time coming here. The people of Indiana are always welcoming. Well, I'm going to welcome in someone today that, in a couple years, you won't have to have an introduction. This guy is someone that I'm really proud of. He's doing some great things from on the clock, Mr. Courtland Griffin. What's going on?
Not much, man.
Good to see you again, by the way.
I'm glad to be here in Indianapolis, covering another combine, getting to see the future in the NFL.
Look, folks, last year I sat in Lucas Oil Stadium with this guy from sun up to sundown almost daily, and he was breaking down talent. And one of the guys that you were really high on was Jaden Fisk.
Yes.
And you saw kind of the year that he had with the Rams this year. You also said Jared Verse was going to be that guy. Yeah. So both those guys answered the bell. This year, and this is a commander-centric show.
Right.
So you and I today spoke with Adam Peters, was at his presser, and the big talk is John Allen can seek a trade.
Right.
So because of that, they're going to have to be in the market for a defensive tackle. Is there someone out there that you think fits this football team, the way Jerzon Newton did last year, because you were high on him as well?
Yeah. There's a couple of different guys, right? It just depends on where the Commanders are wanting to attack, how aggressive they're going to want to be. If it's the first round, right, you got guys like Walter Nolan, who out of Ole Miss, who I think is a blue chip talent. I think in any other draft class, especially last year, he probably could have been one of the first guys taken off the board. Loose wiggle for a big guy, right? Pass rusher from the interior, can play 3 tech, can play 0 tech if he wants to. But if you're Adam Peters, and we know how Adam Peters got some great use out of guys in those middle rounds, a la Mikey Sanders still, right? Where this draft's value is from picks 25 to 70.
Well, this is where we hope that this is why he's in the building, because I keep trying to tell Commanders fans, Courtland, that they're not going to be picking in the top 10.
Right.
That's the goal is to always have later round draft picks, and they're picking 29 this year.
Right.
My question to you now is, would you entertain trading out of that position?
It depends, right? Because of how heavy of a defensive draft this is. Those, like I said, that there's a small gap in between the talent from 25 to 70. Generally in past years, right, you would say 25. You're kind of getting guys who are fringe starters, maybe impact players, rotational guys that can develop into a starter. This year, you're going to get a lot of defensive players that are going to be impact players early in their career.
Okay.
If you're the Commanders, honestly, you're in a catch-22 spot. If you trade up, right, are you trading up because there's a guy there that maybe you really, really love at that edge rusher position, maybe linebacker, right? Maybe a Jay Higgins out of Iowa because Bobby Wagner is getting a little longer in the tooth. Is there maybe a cornerback? Marshawn Lattimore is older, longer, is getting a little bit on the back of his career. Mikey Sanders still might be moved to the slot more primarily. So in Benjamin St. Juice, we don't really know.
I don't think Benji's going to be back.
Right, where his future lies with the team. So maybe there is a Kobe Bryant out of Kansas. Maybe there is maybe Will Johnson falls a little bit further because of the injury that he's dealing with.
I can't see him falling that far, because that's a generational talent.
Like, if he does, do you move up maybe 6 spots, right, 7 spots to try to get that guy? If you're at 29, like I said, you can drop down. I would say I drop down no more than 4 spots.
So it's almost like now for them in this position, it's the best player on the board.
Yeah.
That's on their draft board.
Best, and I would say I would be a little bit more specific with that and say best defensive player on the board. We know what the offense is. We know Jaden Daniels and what he was able to do with limited, quote unquote.
So if a tackle falls that far or a guard falls that far, you wouldn't entertain that?
It depends on what tackle and what guard, right? If it's a Gray Zabel, for example, out of North Dakota State, a guy who can play tackle and guard, I think he's going to be a all-pro caliber guard, similar to a Cooper Beebe from last year out of Kansas State, a guy who's experienced in a bunch of different ways. His Senior Bowl tape was amazing, and I think he could be good. If he's there at 29, I think you stick and pick. But if it's an Armand Membu, or a Ariante Ursery out of Minnesota, you might be able to trade back to that 33rd pick in the second round and still get a blue chip player at the offensive
And
line.
kind of recoup some picks too.
Yes,
You
and
know,
also
in
recoup
doing so.
picks. Yeah.
You know, I did want to ask you, and folks, I'm talking with Courtland Griffin, one of my young pups. You know, does a great job. And shout out to his wife Jade, who's filming this for us as well. You know, we got to show the love. You mentioned Kobe Bryant, you know, from Kansas. Would Washington be a little afraid of him because he's similar stature, size wise, to Emmanuel Forbes? You know, he's not the biggest dude.
No, he's not the biggest guy. I think the difference is between him and Emmanuel, right? Emmanuel Forbes was like 165 pounds,
soaking wet,
with a wet T-shirt on, right, and weights in his pocket.
Right.
Kobe is thick in the spots that you want. So I'm just going to do some scout talk here for the people that are listening, fans that are listening. You want guys who are body composition matters more than weight, right? I think, you know, casual mind is a guy who's 180 pounds, right, plus is a guy who you figure is going to have a little more weights in his pocket, can thump a little bit more. But really what I look at is body composition. I take a guy, for example, like Tez Johnson, the wide receiver out of Oregon. He's thick in the spots that you want him thick in, right? You know, you want to look at a guy's quads, right? Look at his shoulders, his chest.
And Tez Johnson has huge hands,
right, and hands, right. So when I look at Kobe Bryant, I see a guy who's his shoulders are filled out, his chest is filled out, right. He has a little bit more meat around the thigh area. That's a guy who I'm not really worried about. Whereas you look at Emmanuel Forbes, there wasn't too much to pick on, right. He wasn't, you know, built up anywhere, right. He's pretty linear athlete.
I needed to eat some chicken.
right. So when I look at Kobe too, I look at his play style. Emmanuel played more off ball, less press man, right? Kobe's more of a physical guy. He played against some of the bigger wide receivers in the Big 12, right? He played against some larger receivers, and he held his own at the East-West Shrine Bowl game, where, you know, those guys are a lot bigger and those are going to be future NFL talent. So I don't think if you're a Commanders fan, and this is going to sound crazy, he's a bigger Mikey Sanders still.
Okay.
A guy who's aggressive and can hit, and he'll come down and actually
play much bigger than his stature.
Right.
So, folks, this guy also covers the Tennessee Titans, and they're on the clock. They have the number 1 pick. I'm saying they're going to take Abdul Carter because, you know, I'm Penn State alum. I'm biased.
Right.
But you seem to think that they're going to go a different route, take Cam Ward.
Yeah.
I like Cam Ward a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that he's a guy that can come in the NFL and instantly produce for people. He's got a big arm. He's strong in stature. And he's mature. He's played a lot of football.
Yes, sir.
So from that position, if you think they're going to take a quarterback, you're saying that Shedeur Sanders would be off the table for them at 1?
No. So, like you, right, I have my biases. Of course, being an evaluator, you try to keep bias out of it. But when I look at the quarterback position, right, generally you want guys who are 6'2" at minimum, 6'2", around 210, 215, maybe 220 at the most, right, can move, can make every NFL throw, changes the arm angles. Cam Ward fits every box. He checks every box for an NFL talent at the quarterback position. My only problem is when you have a team that's picking number 1, right, or number 1, number 2, there's a rare chance, like the Commanders, for example, where you draft a guy and your team immediately goes from worst to essentially first. With the Titans, you're not going to have a perfect situation. No team in the top 5 generally does. So when I look at Shedeur Sanders, when I evaluated him, I saw a guy who I felt like needed a little bit, some things solidified
at the NFL level.
Right, to be, it's not his talent level, it's the talent around him that I worry about. And if you're the Tennessee Titans right now, this is a 2-year thing. You're not looking to overtake the Houston Texans. You're not looking to try to compete with the Kansas City Chiefs. You're looking to be the best Tennessee Titans you can be. And right now, I think getting a guy like Cam Ward who raises the floor of the current talent you have is better than a guy who is going to be dependent upon how good the talent is, if that makes sense, that's around them.
So one of the questions I have is, obviously, you know, we can't go too many times without me mentioning my school, Penn State.
Right.
Will Levis.
Right.
What do you do with him if you're going to take Cam Ward?
There's a couple options. You keep him on the roster as a cheap backup, right? He's still a second-round talent that you drafted. You traded up to go get him. So you keep him on the roster as a second-round talent, and hopefully, right, you develop him enough to where if there comes a time where Cam Ward cannot play, or it's one of those situations where you're good enough, right, rare occasion that you're good enough to where you can rest guys in those last couple of weeks, he can go in and at least hold his own. If not, right, the other option, the option that I think a lot of teams fail to look at is you take that guy who's a second round pick and you play the long game and you play the mental game with other coaches. Because
You kind of built him up to see if he has some
right,
trade value.
well, that Brian Callahan today said something that I think is very indicative of a lot of coaches. A lot of coaches get into the mindset of and the overconfidence of I can fix him. Let's say Chip Kelly, who's now the offensive coordinator in Las Vegas for the Raiders, who also need a quarterback, says, I can fix that kid, Will Levis. We'll take him. We'll give you a 6th round pick for him. Why not?
Yeah, well, not to cut you off, but I'll say this. This was a guy that was supposed to be the future of the franchise. Right. Well, obviously that's not the case if they're going to take Cam Ward, but there's only 3 quarterbacks in this draft that I think have any kind of cachet to them. You know, Jackson Dart's another guy that comes in from Ole Miss. You know, so with Shedeur and then with Cam Ward, that's it. So now if you're a younger player like Will Levis and you do have some tape out, he's done some things well. Yeah, you may be able to say, look, the Giants are going to be in a need for a quarterback. You know, obviously it doesn't help these guys get a guy like Matt Stafford might be available, but perhaps Sean McVay may say, hey, you know what? I know they have the young kid from Georgia on the roster, but maybe Sean McVay sees something in Will Levis and says, I can work with him out in L.A.
And so here's the thing that I think is going to drive teams away from maybe a Matthew Stafford option. Is he wants $50 million.
I was going to say the money, man.
Right. And also the Rams want a 1st round pick in return to trade him if they don't release him. Like I said, man, like you said, you mentioned Jackson Dart, who I really love. I've loved him since I saw him. Yeah, I loved him since I saw him at Ole Miss. I think the tape from Ole Miss, similar to Bo Nix last year, right? The Auburn tape kind of put a dirty stain on his Oregon tape. Right, whereas with Jackson Dart, the USC tape is going to put a dirty stain on the Ole Miss tape because they're going to look at a guy who, okay, he played under center, but he was more of a generic quarterback, right? Was it the system or was it him? Then he goes to Ole Miss and he looks like a 1st round draft pick. Does. And I mean, like I said, when I see this guy, I mean, 7-step drop, he's accurate. 5-step drop, he's accurate. Under center, he's accurate. Play action, he's accurate. He reads defenses. He has enough arm pop in the arm to get it outside of the numbers and manipulate the middle of the field. And he may be the best field processor in this draft. And I know that's saying a lot, but he may be the best field. I mean, working 1st to 3rd progression, right? Working the check down. I think he's the best in this draft class. I think a lot of teams are starting to fall in love with him now because they're starting to see what I saw back in August of last year.
Okay. All right. Well, look, folks, you know, I don't want to keep this man too long because we still have to do stuff in the stadium this week. So we'll be doing the pod from inside the stadium, you know, but again, young, dynamic dude, really doing some great things. Met him last year, fell in love with him last year here, and was looking forward to getting back here to Indy to get him back on the pod. Again, we're going to break down so many players over the next couple days. And tomorrow, just to let you know, Dan Quinn will be speaking to us from local media from back home. So we'll talk about that. You know, today Adam Peters spoke and I had some really poignant things to say, you know, really excited about his team and the direction they're going in. And, you know, no one asked the question as far as are they closing the gap on the Eagles, but by the end of the week, I will talk with him and see what we can come up with today. But, you know, he came up, showed me some love today, you know, just was good to see, you know, a lot of the folks from the team that we cover are here and we'll have a lot of stuff for you this week. So again, appreciate you guys for joining as always. This one was short. No, it's not 30 minutes. No, it's not an hour. You know, your wife's holding this, so she's like in this thing. So, but look, I appreciate you coming on and we'll be doing this again throughout the week. So as always, have a good one.